when you believe people, guys. This is an intentional narrative and propaganda to convince you to give up self-custody. These get snuck in here, and it's like, we're going to be positive on crypto. But what we're going to do is we're going to input these messages that separate the public from self-custody. And you should be very aware that that's what's going on. And when you hear people talking about it in public and they're like, I hold it on Coinbase or crypto.com, you should be like, no, real freedom is self-custody. Trump SEC chair and what they are moving forward with, of course, in regards to crypto. Now, this is going to be Paul Atkins, and he appeared on Mornings with Maria to discuss his recently announced project crypto. Who here watches these daytime talk shows anymore? I never even heard of Mornings with Maria. I mean, like, does anybody but boomers watch this crap? I have no idea. I'm going to say no. And if you want to get your message out there, for goodness sake, like, adapt to the changing society and go on like a podcast. Then I would hear about it. I'm never going to hear about Mornings with Maria. I don't know. At least maybe some moms are hearing about Bitcoin or something that are, I don't know, cleaning or whatever. But the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission is looking at custody rules for digital assets, including how broker deals, asset managers, and investment advisors can deal with cryptocurrency transactions, its head said Friday. SEC chair, that's really hard to say, Paul Atkins, speaking about his recently announced Project Crypto on Fox Business Mornings with Maria program. You see, nobody watches Fox anymore, or MSNBC or CNN, said the agency was mobilizing at the SEC all our different divisions and offices to implement President Donald Trump's crypto working group's recommendations to make the U.S. a more crypto-friendly nation. This includes adjusting rules that have been around for 90 years or so, he said. We don't want the crypto assets to be on some flash drive in somebody's drawer, he said on Friday. That's exactly how I want it to be. When you believe people, guys, this is an intentional narrative and propaganda to convince you to give up self-custody. These get snuck in here, and it's like, we're going to be positive on crypto. But what we're going to do is we're going to input these messages that separate the public from self-custody. And you should be very aware that that's what's going on. And when you hear people talking about it in public and they're like, I hold it on, Coinbase or crypto.com, you should be like, no, real freedom is self-custody. He says that they need to be in a secure place. What do they always do when they push this narrative? They push the narrative that you are not safe. They use fear. And especially Fox News uses a lot of fear. By the way, I found something else really, really interesting as far as biblical translations and the participation of Murdoch, which I think is very interesting, over the translation of the NIV Bible. And I do think that Fox pushes fear specifically, and I think that they've been doing it since the 60s, maybe even before that. But they will use this fear to influence you to give up your rights. That's what's done every single time throughout history, and that's what they're doing with crypto right here. Oh, it's not secure if you hold it in your bedside drawer. They need to be in a secure place. The reason for doing all this and addressing these various regulations is to provide some certainty for people. You know what I have certainty in? My gun safe and my own keys in that safe. I don't have any trust in any of these centralized entities to hold my crypto. In fact, it would be insane for me to think that I should give up custody of my cryptocurrency, given the track record of American banks at all. At all. Do we have to bring up every single time the banking system in the United States has screwed over the American public and gotten bailed out by our government? No, I don't get bailed out like you rich assholes. I don't get bailed out when you fucking empty my bank account. No way you're touching my crypto. The SEC's work will be based on the legislation passed by Congress, he said, pointing to the already signed Genius Act and existing market structure legislative efforts. Quote, our goal is to get clarity and certainty, he said. It will be underbridged by whatever comes out of Congress, but I believe that we have authority to move forward in these areas and provide certainty and clarity for people. Asked about district court ruling on debit card interchange fees, Atkins said it could support real-time or instant payment networks, and moving toward instant payment settlements would be ideal, he said. This type of payment could be bolstered by using blockchain, and though he did also say that the system could need to have some sort of delay built in to address mistakes. Quote, the longer that it takes to have clearance on some of the transactions, the more risk there is in the system of something going wrong, some black swan event. Now, obviously, once again, utilizing fear here. Now, people make mistakes in these crypto transactions all the time. And unfortunately, I always say this. It's like it's Spider-Man. Like the saying is so true, but like with great power comes great responsibility. With freedom comes risk. These are the principles around cryptocurrency and what used to be the things that the United States stood for, the United States of America, that is, which is an individual has the ability to drive and aim his own life in the direction he wants, and he can take that risk and either suffer the consequences or the reward therein. And the entire government's propaganda, whether it be the right or the left, because clearly this comes from the right now, is to protect the people. Well, whenever they go down that path, they take away some right, whether it be the Patriot Act or whatever it may be. These are the things that they utilize to put fear into people. And that's what I wanted to talk about too. I was looking up this is just a funny side note, but I was looking up the amount of times different translations of the Bible say do not fear. And in the King James Version, it says it a bunch, right? Like, I think it was like 400 times. Maybe I should make a whole dedicated video on this because it's really interesting. The version that says it the least amount of times is the NIV, the New International Version, right? And that one was popularized, within the United States pretty heavily. It was easier to read. They made a lot of, what has been noted as took a lot of liberty with the translation in general. But what gets more interesting is when you look at the foundations behind the NIV Bible. And what I found that was really interesting is that one of the larger foundations that was supporting the translation and distribution of the NIV was the Murdoch Group, which is also going to be related to Fox News, etc. And I thought it at least ironic, right? Correlation is not causation, but I found it ironic that the news network that wants to convince you to go to war with everyone and puts fear into you is also behind the translation of the Bible that removes the most amount of times it says do not fear. Anyways, a little side note there. Everything's not always what it seems, but you also can go down too many rabbit holes, and sometimes I do that, and I get interested in, of course, some conspiracy theories, but that's my latest conspiracy theory, is a theory I've been having fun with. Now, the Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, also had a comment on Bitcoin. And of course, they're just going to confiscate all the Bitcoin that they're going to put all the confiscated Bitcoin that they have into the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve that President Trump has established back in March. In addition, the Treasury is committed to exploring budget neutral pathways, just code for ways we can take Bitcoin from other people and not actually purchase it, to expand the reserve and to execute on the president's promise to make the United States the Bitcoin superpower of the world. To me, I'm just saying, I kind of like my second Trojan horse plan here, which is collapse the net worth of these people in the government and just take away all the intrinsic value of Bitcoin and end it. Like, what are we going to do if, we're in a position where, it is only governments and corporations own Bitcoin? What the is the point of Bitcoin? Honestly, what is the point of it at that juncture, right? Now I have to buy all my Bitcoin from Strategy and the Federal Reserve. Are they going to put in some sort of regulation that forces me to use Bitcoin to transact with? Where is the freedom in that? Where? I don't know, guys. It seems dark and it seems to be going down the wrong path. And I know I've been harping on that for a while, but there's just a lot of bad news in crypto lately. And we thought it was going to go down a different path, and it's not going down that path. And it would be amiss to not acknowledge that it's not going down that path. That doesn't mean you throw out, what is the term? Throw out the baby with the bathwater. It just means that you're aware of it and you speak out against these types of behaviors. You educate people on self-custody, and that's going to have to happen at grassroots level, right? Just like the housing market and how it's been manipulated by large corporations buying up all the real estate. People aren't even living in these houses. And they're artificially inflating the housing market because they're so greedy, they have to buy it all up. And they're going to do the same thing with Bitcoin. And that's what they're doing right now. That's what they're doing exactly right now. I hope you enjoyed this clip from the Crypto Mining Show. If you would like to see more from this particular episode, take a look up here. Don't forget to also subscribe to the channel. And if you want to support me directly, you can go to sonofatech.locals.com and become a member. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next Tuesday.